afternoon. You know, the other day, get this microphone here. Is this working okay? The other day, I went to the bookstore, and I asked the clerk, I said, do you have the latest book by Donald Trump on how to deal with illegal aliens? And the clerk said, get the hell out of here and don't come back. I said, that's the one. Do you have it in paperback? Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here today. It's always good to gather with like-minded people, particularly when we have such a deep problem in this country. America is in a deep state of trouble. Ronald Reagan once said that you could triple our problems in this country and we would still be the greatest nation on earth. And I believed that then, and I believe it now. Yet the internal threats that we face as a nation are very, very real. Let's start off with our national debt, $35 trillion. Now, I have a feeling that most of you don't really appreciate how much money that is. So I got a little exercise for you. We're going to compare 1 million, 1 billion, and 1 trillion. If you take 1 million seconds and go straight through, it will take you 12 days. If you take 1 billion seconds and go straight through, end to end, it will take you 32 years. And if you take 1 trillion seconds and go straight through, it will take you 32,000 years. That's just 1 trillion. Now multiply that by 35. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a devastating number leading to a devastating future if we don't get this under control. Big media, big tech, and big government have conspired to control the narrative and push out disinformation. I'll give you an example. When Trump was shot in the head in an assassination attempt, you couldn't find a mainstream media outlet that would describe it as an assassination. For several hours, even though we saw this live and we saw the repeat nature of it, we saw him, he got shot in the head. It was an assassin. What did we hear? There has been an incident in Philadelphia. There has been an incident. And then they even tried to minimize the injury. He was shot in the ear, as if being shot with a high-powered rifle in the ear is something to shrug off. I say the truth. The president was shot in the head and stood up and didn't take it. That's what mainstream media does. And just the other day, some of you may have heard this. Are you familiar with Alexa? And did you hear about Alexa? You could ask Alexa, why should I vote for Donald Trump? I can't give you political information. Why should I vote for Kamala Harris? Oh, because she's a this and she's a that and she's a. And what's interesting is when Amazon was confronted about this, they said it was a glitch. What I'd like to know is how come the glitches always go one way? We don't ever get the glitches. We get the heel. But that's what the media has done, and the media has combined with big tech, big corporations, and they are destroying our freedom. Under Democratic leadership, lawlessness in our major cities is through the roof. A general gross disrespect for humanity is far-reaching. We have mass shootings weekly. We've seen a manipulation of the justice system, absolutely no border control, chronic incivility bordering on hate, political correctness. Everyone's a racist. Everyone's a sexist. Everyone's offended. Everyone's a victim. He's a she, she's a they. Mandatory shutdowns unless you're rioting, which makes looting okay. And you know, the pandemic's coming back, folks. So get your mask out because it's for our own good. And worship is not essential, but you can head on down to Walmart, they're open. Speech isn't free anymore. You're censored, you're canceled. And this new thing called diversity, inclusion and equity has replaced excellence, competence, and fairness. Our children are being taught that there are two classes of people, oppressors and the oppressed, and you are either one or the other. Truth, justice, faith, and the American family are being redefined in real time by a leftist ideology that very openly, very purposely threatens to fundamentally alter what it means to be an American. Now, whether it's Marxism or socialism or some other leftism, America has been hijacked under the seemingly innocuous banner of so-called social justice, and it's our responsibility as conservatives to get the truth out, particularly to those who share our values, yet cast their votes against those same values. Those of our friends who think and believe red, but vote blue. You know who they are. And so social justice can be difficult to fight. Why? Because it sounds so good. Everybody gets to be equal. Everybody gets to be the same. Well, folks, you should be concerned about any phrase that starts off with everybody gets. Socialism might sound pretty good to a person who feels betrayed by the reality that America hasn't always made good on the whole equality thing. Marxism might have an appeal to someone who has been convinced that they have been oppressed by their neighbor. Economist Thomas Sowell, as a young man in his 20s, was he himself a Marxist. And when later in life he was asked why he gave up on Marxism, he gave a rather profound but simple response. He said, it didn't work. And you know what? It still doesn't. But that hasn't stopped the social justice stormtroopers from thrusting their victimology agenda right down our very throats. Their aim, shut us up, shut us down, a permanent realignment into a state that holds no faith in God and treats everyone unequally so that everyone can be equal. Did you get that? We're going to treat everyone unequally so everyone can be equal. It doesn't even make sense. And while we certainly recognize that there are alternatives to the natural family, they're corrupting our American values through the weaponization of race, the reclassification of sex, and the destabilization of faith and the traditional or natural family. It is the natural family, husbands and wives, fathers and mothers, producing children, raising them together in a loving home that provides the strongest foundation for education and economic opportunity for succeeding generations. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot shy away from this fact. Marriage is essential to success in America. Faith in God, we the people, and family. But the traditional or natural family is in crisis. The moral decay promoted by the left has led to a divorce rate exceeded only by the number of young people who see no value in the institution of marriage at all. The importance of fatherhood, I have 5 children. The importance of fatherhood is being minimized by a society that values masculinity less and less, and even describes it as toxic, unless it is used to describe a particular trait of a woman who identifies as a man. Gender has become something that gets assigned at birth. And we're supposed to believe that women are no longer the only sex that can give birth. Birthing persons. I didn't have a birthing person. I had a mom. You too. Everyone in here had a mother. This is how ridiculous it's getting. The fact that we have to stand on stages like this and defend humanity. We're supposed to believe that it's okay for a male athlete who is ranked number 462 in his sport to declare himself a woman and then compete against women and win a national championship gold medal. Now think about that. If you're number 462, you're not getting a sniff of victory. You are way back. And then you change into a girl and now you become the champion. Is that what we're bargaining for? Is that protecting women? We're supposed to believe it's okay for a 14-year-old girl to give her consent to a surgical procedure that will leave her mutilated, or to agree to an abortion on her own authority without the permission or knowledge of her mom and dad. The very life of a child, an unborn child, continues to be targeted for destruction in a nation that correctly declared the value of life 250 years ago as the first of its self-evident truths. Nowhere has the decline of the traditional family been more evident than in the black family, despite the liberal social programs of the past 60 years. From Reconstruction to the early 1960s, the black family was stable and largely intact, notwithstanding deep segregation and systemic discrimination that was still prevalent in most parts of America. Before Lyndon Johnson's Great Society ushered in the modern welfare state, black fatherless homes were at 25%, compared to 72% today. The growth of big government programs, propaganda, and payoffs really did a number on black America. Just look at abortion's impact on black America. The left has successfully tied abortion to race, suggesting that laws against abortion are racist. Laws against abortion are racist because of their disproportionate impact on black women, since black women get most of the abortions. Our social justice reformers protest that 38% black incarceration rate is racist because blacks make up only 13% of the population. They claim that this is evidence of a disproportionate rate in the criminal justice system. However, the rate of abortions on black women is the exact same disproportionate 38%, and they don't protest about it being racist at all. In fact, the Democrat Party boldly celebrates the disproportionate impact that abortion has on black women. Now, abortion is the only medical procedure where the desired outcome is death. Of the 60 million unborn babies aborted in America over the past 50 years, 22 million were black. That's more black babies killed by abortion in 50 years than the entire population of black America in 1960. Population of black America in 1960 was 18 million. We killed 22 million in 50 years. Put another way, the 22 million black babies killed between 1973 and 2023 represent 1/2 of the 45 million black Americans alive today. Without those abortions, the population of black America today could easily be 65 or 70 million or more. Someone should tell Vice President Kamala Harris that killing 22 million black babies is the real black voter suppression. As black conservatives, we believe in women having the right to do what they will with their own bodies and their reproductive health, unless it impacts the life inside of them. We are opposed to killing another human being. The right to prevent pregnancy is different than the right to terminate pregnancy. And I want to go back a little bit and talk about those incarceration rates. I kind of glossed over that, but there's 4 numbers that really shed light on the issue of race and justice. And those numbers are 13, 38, 56, and 90. 13% of the population in America, the population in America is black, 13%. It is true that 38% of those incarcerated in our prisons are black. And those 2 numbers sustain the chief argument that the criminal justice system is racist. 13% of the population, 38% of the incarceration, that has to be a bad thing. But here's a number that they don't talk about, and it's a number that we need to embrace and work on. 56% of the murder victims in America are black. We're only 13% of the population, folks. 56% of the murder victims in this country are black. And you know what else? 90% of the people who killed them, the murderers, they themselves were black. That's the problem that we have in this nation. That's the problem that we have to embrace, and that's the problem that we have to figure out. Yet we get distracted every time you see a police action shooting, some are bad, some are deserving, but the numbers are not like this. But that's distracting. We're just south of the biggest problem in the country, in the city of Chicago, where black-on-black crime is devastating. But we're not doing anything seriously about it. I've spent my entire legal career in public service, first as a local elected prosecutor for 14 years, and then as the Indiana Attorney General. And I can tell you as a result of that, I believe in America. We believe in the promise of America that's embodied within our nation's first principles: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We believe in justice. Justice with no qualifiers, no race, no social, no economic, but justice as it is set forth in the Constitution of the United States. And although at times elusive, we are still committed to justice for all. Now, the credo of the black conservative is best summarized by the words of abolitionist Frederick Douglass when he was addressed the question, "What shall we do with the Negro?" And he responded, "I had but one answer from the beginning: do nothing with us. Your doing with us has already played the mischief with us. Do nothing with us. And if the Negro cannot stand on his own legs, let him fall. All I ask is give him a chance to stand on his own legs, let him alone." Now, the Douglass model of responsible government on race was give the black man a chance to stand on his own and let him alone. Now, we cannot shrink from the truth that prior to the end of slavery, the United States government could hardly be accused of giving blacks a chance. To the contrary, the failure to abolish slavery in conjunction with the new birth of freedom during our revolutionary years remains the single biggest lost opportunity for freedom in the history of mankind. The political compromises made, though intellectually necessary as they may have been to establish a free and independent nation, nevertheless have contributed to nearly 250 years of hypocrisy, corruption, and flawed legal doctrine that has scarred our republic, perhaps permanently. Following emancipation and the end of the Civil War, the United States rightfully seized upon the opportunity to push the restart button on the official responsibility to black America. And to its credit, Congress acted quickly with a series of amendments to the U.S. Constitution actually designed to improve the state of black America. First, the 13th Amendment officially abolished slavery nearly 100 years after the Declaration of Independence completely ignored the issue. Next, passage of the 14th Amendment extended U.S. citizenship to all persons born in the United States, which meant most blacks, and further guaranteed all citizens the equal protection under the law. And finally, the 15th Amendment provided black men the right to vote. Women did not yet have the right to vote, and on this point, black women were mistreated equally with white women. The United States government had finally, formally, and officially recognized the constitutional rights of the black former slave as a free voting citizen with rights equal to anyone else. Civil rights for blacks had finally been achieved in law, but sustaining those rights in practice would prove challenging. Over the next 2 decades, nearly 2,000 blacks were elected and served in public office. Black men were beginning to stand on their own legs, as Douglass had envisioned. But they were far from being left alone. Throughout the South, state and local Democrat governments, believing it to be their civic responsibility to strip black men of their newfound franchise, adopted a variety of mechanisms to do just that. Poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses, and other intimidation measures ultimately eliminated nearly all black political gains by the beginning of the 20th century. Now, these sinister tactics were far more effective at suppressing black voter turnout than requiring a photo ID on a Georgia driver's license. Next, the law just didn't mean what it said. The constitutional provision, equal protection under the law, was reinterpreted, redefined, if you will, in the case of Plessy v. Ferguson, and officially revisioned as separate but equal, making race segregation of blacks the law, which was zealously enforced by Southern government officials all over. But these Southern Democrat governors, sheriffs, and police chiefs were not the only racists engaged in official segregation. One particular Northerner, himself a former president of an elite Ivy League institution and governor of New Jersey, President Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, a supposed champion of international peace and humanity through the proposed League of Nations, Woodrow Wilson ordered the official segregation of the federal government and the United States Armed Forces, thereby making Jim Crow segregation official government policy in the South, while redlining and de facto segregation was the standard practice in the North. Both had the same effect: keep the black man from standing on his own. That leads us to the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which became the government's best answer to thwarting stubborn and violent racist practices, still very much a staple of American life at that time, and thus was born the protected class. Now, the protected class status recognized that readily identifiable groups with immutable or unchangeable characteristics that subjected its members of the group to historical and widespread discrimination would be legally protected to make up for centuries of racial oppression. That's a long definition. There's a lot of hoops that you have to go through to get that protection. This established blacks as a protected class and was intended to remedy the level of abuse levied upon black Americans. It certainly made sense at the time. After all, no other group had been as readily identifiable by an unchangeable characteristic, skin color, than black Americans. And no other group in America had been so continuously subjected to the degree of historical atrocities as those endured by black Americans, despite the amended Constitution. The rationale behind the designation of blacks needing protection was the recognition of long-standing and severe damage done to blacks by not leaving them alone. It's true that blacks made many significant gains as an identifiable protected class, but groups that had not suffered nearly the same degree of historical discrimination or hostility have arguably benefited much more. For example, minority business enterprises, MBE, were established to correct policies that crippled black business opportunity to compete for state and federal projects. But these programs, designed to set aside opportunities for blacks, also permitted other ethnic or so-called disadvantaged groups, including women, that didn't have the same history of discrimination, and they benefited to a greater degree. Predictably, the list of protected classes has continued to expand and now includes, among others, sexual orientation and gender preferences. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the protected class no longer makes sense if it ever did make sense in the first place. I believe it's time for the protected class to be retired and eliminated altogether. The lingering effects of historical discrimination was the aim of the protected class, but it has rather become a protector of the preferred choice over another and has more to do with political favor than righting the ship. The protected class has thus become effectively hijacked by the social justice bandits with their purpose to compel acceptance of certain behaviors, choices, and lifestyles, and as a matter of constitutional right. So, gay is the new black. Transgender is the new black. Illegal alien is the new black. Same-sex couples is the new black. Non-binary is the new black. The point is there is an effective strategy. If you can attach it to black, they won't fight back. So you make transgender about racism. Now, everybody is concerned about who wants to be a racist. Suppose I tell you that we're gonna have a prize. I want to give you $25,000. Who wants to win $25,000? Did I get your attention? I got a prize for $25,000, but you have to solve a really, really tough math problem. But never fear, because you're going to get help. you get to pick your helpers. You got a choice of 3 white guys or 3 Asians. Who are you picking? Who are you picking? You're picking the Asians. Why are you picking the Asians? They excel in mathematics. Does that make you a racist? We all are thinking Asians because Asians have a reputation for being good at math, and you want to win that $25,000. We all have that tendency to categorize people, and even when it's a positive, being supportive of math, we're using race or ethnicity to make a value judgment. Well, guess what, folks? We all do it. We all do it. If I change the example around just a little bit and I say we can still win that $25,000, but we're going to be at the park playing basketball, and we got 5 black guys and 5 Asians, who's picking the Asians? Nobody. That doesn't make you bad. That's what we have to understand about racism and decisions based on race or not based on race. First of all, we're all human. We all make decisions based on a summary of information that we gather, sometimes from looking at people or our experiences from people. We're being taught now, though, that we can't make decisions based on those attitudes because we may offend someone who has a sexual propensity to do something that we don't understand. I don't even want to know what you do behind closed doors. The protected class has lost its remedial purpose in favor of a favored preference. Logically, you cannot have a protected class without having a corresponding unprotected class. And that doesn't sound very equitable to me. We see it all the time now. We see biological men who turn themselves into trans women and then compete or oppose the interest of biological women. Now, biological women are supposed to be protected. So if we're protecting biological women and we're protecting trans women, who wins in that conflict? We have created too many protected classes, and it makes no sense. Every time a new protected group is added to the preferred or special list, the other protected groups are less preferred and less special. The thing about being special is this: if everyone is special, then no one is special. If no one is special, then everyone is equal. And therefore, we are back to equal protection under the law. You know, Malcolm X once said in response to a question on the progress being made in race relations, "I will never say that progress is being made." He said, if you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. If you pull it all the way out, that's not progress. He said the progress is healing the wound that the original blow made. To borrow from Malcolm's metaphor, how does America heal from a 400-year-old festering wound? Well, perhaps we don't. What's done is done. Maybe at best we're left with a permanent scar, and our responsibility is to determine how to best manage this scar. It is what it is. Are we going to try to hide it, cover it up, pretend it's not there? We can change names, we can tear down monuments, but that doesn't change the actual history. And we need our history. We need to know our history. We need to learn from our history. Some of those things we don't want to repeat, and we can't not repeat it if we don't know it. We can be angry, full of hatred, bitterness, and looking for someone to blame. But anger and bitterness, well, that's not going to move towards a solution. And perhaps we can embrace the scar. It is what it is. It's part of who we are. And as a nation and as a people, we should acknowledge it and move forward in the spirit of forgiveness. Forgiveness as we would want to be forgiven ourselves. And so since the mid-1960s, most of black America has shackled themselves politically to the Democrat Party that does not share their values and who has historically has not been very friendly. And yet Democrats have a cult-like dominance built on black dependence on government and the false narrative that the Republicans are nothing but a bunch of white supremacists, including all of us. We're white supremacists too. As a consequence, one party takes blacks for granted, and the other party largely leaves them alone. For the past 60 years, black voters have come to equate big spending liberal government with better for blacks, which has proven disastrous for black America. What we are promoting is black political independence, not tied to a particular party or a party platform, but rather to a value system most beneficial to black empowerment through faith, through family, through economic opportunity that would force both parties to adjust their relationship and platform to more fully consider the interests, objectives, and values of black Americans to support our freedoms under the Constitution. And towards this aim, our objectives here are to network, to get together as groups here and connect with groups all over this country and develop resources. We need resources to build black conservatism. And black conservatism is important because we are the success, we are the future of the success of the conservative movement. If we can take those 90% of black Americans and get them in tune with their value system, we won't lose another election. But it's an uphill battle, and it requires resources. You know, Jeff Bezos gave Van Johnson $100 million to do what he wanted to do. Where's our Jeff Bezoses? All of us, each of us, need to look through our wallets and look through our resources to determine, can we find resources to help us build that bridge so that we can strengthen ourselves as a people and as conservative Americans. Thank you very much. God bless each and every one of you.